About 2 years ago, I watched this SPL game between two of the best advanced players, M-Dragon and Starmaster, and M-Dragon's team really struck me. It's not innovative in a way that jumps out at you, no UU Pokemon, no wacky movesets on standard Pokemon, nothing like that. Instead, it's unique insofar as it brings together synergies, which are excellent, synergies of 2-3 Pokemon, and combines them in ways that aren't seen. And this makes it deceptively tricky to play against, because this is not really the goal of the team, but it is an extra trick to have up your sleeve when your opponent cannot figure out your last. And that comes from the fact that these synergies that I'm talking about are not often paired together. So Zapdos Dugtrio is not generally going to be a team style that has Aerodactyl in the last slot, or Choice Band Metagross for that matter, or even Choice Band T-Tar. Choice Band T-Tar is underrated in and of itself, but that's for later in the video. And to say nothing of multiple Choice Banders stacking together, when you think of a team with 4 Choice Banders, you think of a Medicham Heracross style slugfest, not something like this. Now, this team does not need to lead with Zapdos. The reason why I was inspired to make this video was that M-Dragon used this team again very recently in SPL Finals. He led with Metagross this time, but it's the same general principle. So, a good team generally has a lot of overlapping synergy between just 2 members. And Zapdos has amazing synergy with a lot of these Pokemon, of course. So the way just 2 Pokemon together can be so effective against such a wide portion of the metagame, and then when you begin stacking these little 2 Pokemon combinations, then you get something that covers a great deal of the meta and allows you to play the game and outplay whatever your opponent might throw at you, which makes it a reliable choice. It's got the tools to outplay, and that's what you want in high-stakes tournament settings, especially best of 1, which is terrible, where you, as much as you think you can read your opponent's soul, you never really know what they're going to bring, and you don't want to be caught off guard against whatever it is. You don't want to say, oh, well, they'll never use Super Rachi for insert stupid reason here, and then you face a Super Rachi and you're toast. The advantages you get are just not that significant, in my view anyway. I know some people find that contentious, but this team is extremely good at covering pretty much any threat you're going to throw at it, or having the tools to play around it at the very least. And we will go over that in depth. And it also has so much offensive power that there's not really a defensive team that's going to be able to take it on, especially because the offensive synergy is operating on both ends of the special and physical spectrum. What I mean by that is Zapdos and Dugtrio, a 2 Pokemon pairing, is already outstanding. And that's really a special offense-focused pairing. It's like, oh, well, Dugtrio is physical. Well, Dugtrio removes special checks like T-Tar, Celebi, Blissey, and that lets Zapdos be a threat. I know the Zapdos on this team is especially defensive, but I will get to that. In that a lot of defensive teams, you will see completely unable to scratch Spadev Zapdos with Rest. And that makes it a good choice even on offensive teams. It's not the most popular, and you would be totally forgiven if you were to think that this set of 6 Pokemon would prefer a more offensive Zapdos. And it's not written in stone either, so I'm sure you could use this team with a more offensive version of Zapdos, although I would suggest some bulk on it. But Spadev Zapdos sits on most defensive teams. The best they're going to do when they can't wear it down with Leech Seed because it doesn't heal, when it rests and it has bulk, so unstab Ice Beams bounce off. The best they're going to do is T-Tar Rock Slide. That's generally pretty good, right? But that's where your Dugtrio comes in. And as soon as Dugtrio removes that T-Tar, Zapdos is just right in there. So there's that synergy. So offensively, that's in and of itself, that's already going to be an effective tool against most teams. And let's look at the real focus of the team, the 4 Choice Banders. Even if we don't count Dugtrio as a Choice Bander, we still kind of do because of its synergy with Aero, but more on that in a second. So, the 4 Choice Banders obviously work together to beat the opponent down on the physical side. and that is fairly self-explanatory, from Metagross's Boom, or Meteor Mash if you want to go that route, to CB-Tar's Focus Punches. And obviously, then once you've got these two big hitters, then you've got Aerodactyl cleaning up. So, speaking of synergy, Zapdos and Metagross have amazing synergy. If you aren't trying to trap the opposing special sponge, like Snorlax, then you don't have to. You can punish it with Metagross. Choice Band Metagross is an amazing Snorlax punish. Or T-Tar works very similarly. And in fact, the dual Choice Band combo of Metagross and T-Tar, that's more synergy, because now you can blow your Metagross up and still have a big Choice Bander. In fact, one of the drawbacks when you say 4 Choice Band is like, oh, you are going to have an issue with Skarmory. Well, this kind of team against defensive teams, offense wants to end the game fast. As few turns as possible. So with Metagross getting a KO with his Boom very quickly, then you do not have 4 Choice Banners that can be taken advantage of. You have 3, but your opponent is already down a crucial member of their defensive core. It's not like they can just say, oh, well, take this Pokemon, you know? And to say nothing of the fact that if you choose to go that route, then you can also go with the Meteor Mash route. Sorry, I was trying to figure out which window I was going to open, and I had a moment there. Okay, so we will get to the recent SPL replay after we go over the team, which was posted publicly by M-Dragon himself. And I'm pretty sure the new version that he used in this recent SPL was just, switching the Metagross to the lead slot. Now, that's why I personally hated having a definitive version of my favorite teams, because a lot of the marks of a good team is that there's a lot of flexibility. You do not necessarily have to run X moveset on Y Pokemon, or lead off with X Pokemon. So, and this team is a great example how you could lead off with T-Tar if you wanted to. So, grain of salt, that really depends on the player and their play style, how they want to approach it, and to some extent their opponent, if you want to go down that route. Anyway. So, we've got the synergy of Zap and Dugtrio, we got the synergy of Zap and T-Tar and Metagross, we got the synergy of T-Tar and Metagross together, and I really want to highlight how underrated a beast Choice Band T-Tar is in general. It's kind of, I don't want to say forgotten, but it's so easy to just slap on a mix set if you want your T-Tar to wall break, or a D-Deer, or a Sub Puncher, but the reason why I really agree with M-Dragon's choice of Choice Band here is the immediate brute force against everything means that you will not be walled. No matter what your opponent, I mean, you can be outpredicted potentially, but there's not going to be a Pokemon that you throw into CB-Tar and say, okay, well, this is blanked forever. There is no Pokemon that permanently counters CB-Tar. Whereas if you had a mixed T-Tar, anytime you face a Milotic or a bulky Suicune, you'd be like, all right, well, now this is going to be tough. And that forcefulness is really crucial to opening up the game, late game, for Aerodactyl. And, DD, it's not going to do enough damage in enough time. You're going to just thud into Swampert and then wonder why it's protecting out of Aerodactyl range immediately afterwards. It doesn't even have to protect out of arrow range. It'll just be out of arrow range. So, you really need that immediate smack. Also, in terms of flexibility, these are the EVs on the variant that M-Dragon posted on the Smogon forums, but I am sure that you could run something else. I'm sure you could run Max Attack T-Tar. I would. You could run a slower one, you could run a faster one, you could run a bulkier one. Really up to you. So, yeah, CB-Tar, an underrated beast. And I think one that's very important here, especially because that immediate power and is going to be big in games where it's going to be bang bang, trading KOs back and forth. You need to win as many 1v1s as possible. And as great as Mixed T-Tar is, it is not threatening an OHKO on things the way CB-Tar is. Like even DD-Tar doesn't immediately threaten bulky Zapdos with Rock Slide, whereas Zapdos is not living CB-Tar ever. So I really appreciate its position here. And Metagross, I mean, same deal with the EVs and the power and the speed, whatever you like. Swampert's position here, I also like Pert in that it's not just here, oh, physical walling and preventing you from getting swept by DDers, whatever. Obviously it does that, and opposing arrow, of course, since your Metagross is blowing up and doesn't have lefties anyway. And Dugtrio does not count as a rock resist. So obviously you have your Swampert here to just kind of blanket check everything. But this is not just the obligatory necessary evil. Just, oh yeah, throw on Swampert and, you know, maybe it'll do stuff. The choice to run Refresh here means that the Swampert has synergy with Zapdos alongside Dugtrio, in that you are able to play the long game. You know, obviously with your and that's why I really like the flexibility of this team. You can go really fast with Metagross blowing up, and then T-Tar focus punching something, Dugtrio picks something off, and then Aerodactyl finishes. Yes, sure, but you can also slow it down. That's why the Rest Zapdos is really good. Also, the Rest Zapdos is rest as opposed to, and especially defensive, and bulky, of course. Like with max HP, it's not just taking special hits, it's good at taking physical hits too. The reason why it's bulky is because with an offensive team like this, you're not left wanting for power here. And we know that Spadef Zapdos alongside Dugtrio is already a threat. So what we want here is to get more out of it, i.e. hit-taking ability, because yes, you are going to have a lot of power with your Choice Banders, but you are also going to have to switch into things at some point, and you want to, I mean, you're not trying to wall things forever, against offensive teams anyway, but you also need to have some level of backbone. No team is fast-paced enough to where it can give up that kind of thing in advance. So the T-Tar, the Swampert is like the obligatory wall, quote-unquote, but the decision to make Zapdos defensive is a really good one as well, in my opinion. And with Refresh, then Swampert can also stay in on things like Toxic Blissey, and not be immediately forced out. And again, I keep stressing flexibility in the team builder in the battle because it is so important. And the example I'm thinking of here is if your Swampert is chased out by Blissey every time, because if your Pert gets hit by Toxic, you lose, then that makes it a lot easier for your opponent to play around you. They can force you in certain positions a lot more easily. But with Refresh, you can switch out if you want, of course, but you don't have to. You can stay in, and in fact, you don't just have to scout what Blissey's going to do for a few turns. You also beat Blissey one-on-one, or you threaten it out because it Toxics. Oh, it has to natural cure and switch out. Okay, so you force the Blissey out. In a similar vein, if by some chance the Metagross did not take down the Skarmory and Swampert has to stay in against the Skarm, then you can just beat it down with Surf. You're not fearing getting O-code by Toxic, to borrow an old phrase, and then losing to the opponent's Aerodactyl. You can stay in against opposing Swampert, for similar reasons. And when you have this flexibility with your Refresh Swampert, you can stay in and Surf and chunk the opposing Pert, the opposing Skarm. And this is not just, oh, it's flexible and it's good to have. You are directly working towards that Aerodactyl win condition. So it's it's not the most obvious synergy, but it is there, and it shows a great attention to detail and understanding of the metagame from M-Dragon. So major props for that one. And of course, the Zap, Dug, Refresh Pert thing reminds me of things Astamatidos would do. Stalling bulky stuff out. It just gives you opportunities that you wouldn't think you have against defense because, oh, Swampert's not really a good Pokemon in a defense, but suddenly, you find that it bolsters you a lot more if you're not trying to go Zapdug versus the world, when you can also fall back on Pert a little bit. Now, Pert is, of course, not really the focus on this team, so let's go back to the offense. And Aerodactyl. So, the reason I really love Aerodactyl here is that it's not really the kind of Pokemon you would expect given the other synergies. So let's look at these other synergies. Zapdug, okay, sure, great synergy, but you're not really going to be stacking that with physical attackers most of the time. But it also works in the sense that Dugtrio and Aero are also great synergy, because Dugtrio removes Pokemon like Metagross and Jirachi and Tyranitar, which would stop Aero from spamming its most spammable attack, Double Edge, as well as Hidden Power Flying, because it is flying on this team, since Dugtrio trapping Celebi means you do not need to run HP Bug. And you are more than well covered against DD Tar, so you don't have to worry about letting it set up or anything. With between Doug, Pert, Bulky Meta, Bulky T-Tar, yeah, you're fine. This is one of the most perfect teams into DD Tar as you can get. Anyway, so yeah, Doug has this synergy with Aero, so that goes even further. But yeah, it's unexpected to see, because you see Zapdog and then you're not expecting the dual choice bander or the third choice bander. You think, oh, how can this possibly work? And you could theoretically run Zapdog Aerodactyl for sure. You know, Zap. If you just made this Metagross a Skarmory, then yeah, you could run a team like this. I mean, you'd be running a much less fast-paced team that now has its reluctance to switch into opposing Zapdos as much more of an issue, because here, Spitav Zapdos is also very helpful for helping check opposing Zapdos. It's not ideal here, but the offensive pace is so relentless and so ferocious that you can play around it. Whereas if you go the Skarm route, then you are going to be a lot more pressed to switch into Zapdos when it gets a completely free turn as you use Spikes. So, yeah, you could do Zap, Doug, Aero stuff on Spikes. You know, a build temporarily escapes me, but I mean, it's absolutely been done before, I'm sure. Although it is a tight fit. But see, that's what I mean. Zap, Doug, Aero on one team is really, really difficult to pull off, Spikes or no Spikes. I also really enjoy this team because it is a great demonstration of Aero without Spikes. I am of the old school camp that believes Aero does not need Spikes. Obviously, it's one of the best abusers of them in the game, you know, if not the best. But it does not need them. And in fact, there was a time in advance, about a decade ago, a little less, where CB Tar plus Aero teams, offenses without Spikes, were very, very popular. And I really like this team as a, you know, not an example of what was popular then, because this was not used then, but something like that. You know, the dual CB Rock is a forgotten. It's actually kind of a trademark of M-Dragon's. His TSS teams always used to run CB Tar. His TSS teams with Aero always used to run CB Tar, I should say. So, yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that's actually kind of all the synergy I wanted to... No, but it actually kind of is. It's just you have all these little pairings together that you usually don't get. And that makes it tougher to expect Aero in the last slot. And it also means you have a very unique offensive attack, because you have so many different ways to hit the opponent. And it's not like just spamming 6 different Pokemon. You know, it's like, oh, well, now I'll have my Mixments, then I'll have my DD Gara, then I'll have my I don't know what. You know, and just throwing offensive Pokemon at the opponent until stuff collapses. No, the synergy is there. It's overflowing with synergy. It's just the unusual way with which these different synergies come together that makes for a unique end product. That's what I really, really like about this team. So, now we will glance at how this team functioned on the biggest stage, the recent SPL Finals. As soon as I finish adjusting these dimensions here. Alright, here we go. So, there's the Metagross lead into Zapdos. You can Rock Slide, you can... Yep, there's Rock Slide, and Zapdos drops immediately. And now being filled... I mean, talk about Zapdug. So now we're in for a very fast-paced game. And you've got the Aero here. This is exactly what you want. You know, into standard Zapdug teams, Aero... I mean, obviously they'll have measures for Aero, but it is a major threat. So your overall strategy of physical attackers into Aero, that's really big. And you think, oh, well, Zapdos wasn't really an Aero check. Wrong. Zapdos was a Pokemon that prevented Aero from spamming EQ, and EQ is a move that it might want to use to pick off Jirachi. Although, again, that's where your own Dugtrio comes in, picking off the Jirachi. So there is the Jirachi, and M-Dragon goes right for a Toxic. I think he was looking for a Celebi there, because Jirachi is not really a switch to Zapdos, blindly anyway, especially if it's a more offensive Jirachi. You don't want to eat those T-Bolts. He just goes right for a Calm Mind on the T-Bolt, very bravely. I don't know if it was bravery or not even fearing Thunder Wave, which is very, very possible on an offensive team like this, because there's nothing about a CB Metagross lead that suggests Spadef Zapdos at all. This Zapdos had not revealed anything. There was no way of knowing, so it just went right for the Calm Mind. But that also might suggest lack of better options into Zapdos. So, hey, you remove this Jirachi, your Aerodactyl gets better, your Zapdos gets better. Look at that synergy. It is absolutely beautiful. In comes T-Tar, good Jirachi check, and shrugs off that Psychic. Here comes a big Band EQ, and here is why Band is so immediately useful. You don't have to worry about the Jirachi beating you. I mean, if it was mixed, you'd be in trouble. You'd sacrifice your T-Tar, then you'd revenge kill it with Dugtrio. But now you have the 1-up, and with DD, then yeah, I guess you could DD and hope that, and you would take the Jirachi out and then get revenge killed by Dugtrio. But you'd also have a much less effective wall breaker, because again, that earlier example of DD-Tar will just thud into Swampert. It's like, oh well, what if I run DD HP Grass T-Tar? Okay, then it'll thud into Flygon or Claydol. And with CB you hit everything. You have to predict well, of course, but that's where skillful piloting comes in. So yeah, the immediacy of the wall breaking here, I mean, it's not even used as wall breaking, it's used as a better defensive check. That's the beauty of Pokemon. Sometimes extra offense helps you perform defensively better. And in a fast-paced slugfest like this, where 6 turns in, we've already got 3 fainted Pokemon across both sides. That's and we're about to have a 4th. We're about to have a 4-4 game after 7 turns. But yeah, I mean, the CB there is just as useful against offense. So, it doesn't even get revenge killed by Dugtrio. I guess he didn't want to switch into Zapdos again. But, I mean, hey. So now Zapdos with Spadef and HP Grass is going to be a superb... I guess we didn't go over Zapdos and moveset. I thought it was fairly self-explanatory. But Toxic forces Blissey to, lose eventually, or switch out, in a one-on-one, and HP Grass is so you can actually handle Swampert. You don't want to be getting blanked by Refresh. I mean, you'd PP stall, but you don't want to have to do that. Best to be as threatening as possible. So, also good coverage against Claydol. So, in comes Toxic in case the Pert wants to stay in. Better to hit Celebi that way. And, because HP Grass doesn't KO anyway, if you Toxic the first time, then, I mean... let's not overanalyze that. Toxic would hit a Celebi if it were to come in there, and also make sure that Swampert is permanently maimed. So that's the best way to summarize it, probably. That HP Grass, can hit Swampert if it stays in, but with Toxic, that's the thing, actually. No, that's a great move from M-Dragon. Yeah, because if you Toxic the Swampert, unless it's Refresh, but on an offensive team like that, I mean, I know this is an offensive team with... Refresh Swampert, but it's still unlikely. And if you force Refresh, you force Refresh. Actually, no, I take it back. It showed EQ and Ice Beam. It's not going to be a Refresh anymore, so that move is much more measured and well thought out than I realized at first. So yeah, EQ, Ice Beam, Refresh, Protect. Okay, it has been used, but it's really, really, really specific, and it's not going to be used on a team like this. With Surf, the whole reason Surf works on M-Dragon's team, Refresh Pert works on M-Dragon's team, is because Mono Surf is great coverage. So, yeah, so Toxic, because with HP Grass, you could sting the Swampert with HP Grass, and then it would retaliate, and then it would protect for more health afterwards, and then switch out, and it could still potentially protect out of Aerodactyl range. But if you Toxic the Swampert, and it's not going to refresh, then you make sure it is not healing ever again. And that means it's going to be worse. It can't shrug off a hit from T-Tar, can't shrug off a hit from... to lose to a Swampert one-on-one more easily now, because you don't have to get that first turn of Toxic and withstand a Surf. Not that Swampert really seems valuable for M-Dragon against special offense, but hey, there you go. So, yeah, that Toxic first, and now if it's going to stay in, it's going to stay in, and... there's HP Grass. Ice Beam's bouncing. I mean, Ice Beam's actually doing fairly hefty chunk, which makes you think it's a more offensively geared Swampert, which is, you know, fine because offensive Swampert is still good defensively, and the more wall breaking the better, especially alongside Dugtrio to remove Celebi. And yeah, so now it's in Gengar range. Almost sure. Oh no, it's not. Spidev Zapdos gets that T-Bolt off. Beautiful. Yeah, bulky Gengar. I mean, you got to run that bulk, but yeah, the facilitatory Gengar here of all the special offense shenanigans, and is not going to have the bulk to take out Spidev Zapdos. Look at that, 28%. Didn't even hang on by 1, hung on by 2, so it wasn't even like a min roll or anything. And now in comes Aero with Gengar being in. I mean, and look at this. Gengar is in Rock's range, or sorry, Rock Slide range. Rock's range, like there's Stealth Rock around. It's in Rock Slide range, and Jirachi is down, Swampert is down, and the other, I mean, Dugtrio is not a Rock resist, so there's no way the last is going to resist Rock, right? And the guard just goes down. So I guess you're preserving. Yep, and there's a DD Tar, and M-Dragon has a big Swampert there, in addition to a Dugtrio in the back. So even if this is DD HP Grass, then, I mean, theoretically, now that it's faster than Doug, it could crit, especially because it's bulky and doesn't get 2 KO'd by Surf, you know, before lefties, to say nothing of lefties. So theoretically, yeah, it could do some nasty crit shenanigans and win. But, and there's the flinch, but this Swampert has a lot of physical bulk. So there's the EQ and knocks it into Torrent range. Beautiful Toxic from M-Dragon. Because this guarantee, I mean, it's riskier. It's risky. Actually, no, it's not risky because after the flinch, what am I talking about? Yeah, after the flinch, it is 2 KO'd by +2 EQ. So, I mean, good move by PK Leech going for, or PK Thunderbolt, going for that flinch to put it into a KO range of the +2 EQ. As you see, it does 50, which, you know, not going to quite to a KO through lefties, you know, regardless of what the actual roll is. But you have no knowledge of that, of what the Swampert's EVs are. To get a precise calc, you can just get an estimate. You can get pretty close, in fairness. But yeah, M-Dragon Toxic instead of going for Surf, and now it's just a matter of stalling it out, and then, yeah, you can't lose at this point. You just protect and switch and sacrifice a bunch, and then Aero will beat Dugtrio last, and you are good to go. So, yeah, beautifully, beautifully done. I mean, you can even protect with Swampert out of EQ range. I think he DDs here, and I mean, Great Desperation DD, but it's not going to be enough, as now the Doug is sacked, and now in comes Pert again, and yeah, you don't even have to finish with Aero, just Swampert's going to win. So, that is everything from me. I hope you like the team, like the video. Like the video if you enjoyed, it helps. But yeah, yeah. Congratulations to M-Dragon for making such a unique, excellent team. This is the kind of innovation that we all strive for as Pokemon players. And congrats for its success on the highest stage. And that's about it. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one.